America, bonjour, hi, Canada, howdy, as Senator Langford told me to say to folks down in Oklahoma last week. Good morning to you all. It's Monday, July 17th. I'm live in Studio North, and it's not raining, and we're celebrating. Since I signed off on Friday morning, it has done nothing but rain. Really, nothing but rain. And that has led to tragic consequences in Pennsylvania, where I think 4 people are dead, and some are still missing after flash floods came along. And that northeastern rain has just moved into New Hampshire, which was just, if anyone had an event in New Hampshire this week, I think they're all at Turning Point, where former President Trump spoke yesterday, and the Iowa Family Council meeting where everybody else spoke at on the day before. So maybe they missed this, but it's been nothing but rain, which is fine. I like the rain. I'm from Ohio. It's kind of makes me feel like I'm back in Buckeye land. Fetching Mrs. Hewitt, not so much. Overnight, you probably missed this, but the Ukrainians blew up the bridge again. The bridge which connects the Russian mainland with the occupied Crimea Peninsula was blown up again. That's the second time the Ukrainians have pulled that off. The money was released. All the fundraising statistics were released. Former President Trump's way ahead of everybody. He had a big head start. Joe Biden has really crashed. He's very, very, very upset. Biden with sluggish small donations wait for liberal energy to rise. That's the headline in the New York Times yesterday. When President Biden traveled to San Francisco last month, he raised more than $10 million in 36 hours from wealthy Democrats. Trips to Chicago and New York netted millions more, as did fundraising events around Washington, proving that the party's big donor class is fully committed to Mr. Biden's reelection campaign. But, the article continues, the small donor online money spigot that helped Mr. Biden smash fundraising records during his 2020 presidential campaign has not yet turned on. And there are ample signs that it may be months before it does. That is bad news for him. But we do have former President Trump, Governor DeSantis, leading GOP fundraising. Now remember, I'm in Switzerland. I don't spin the numbers. I just tell you what the numbers are. They are significantly farther ahead than anyone else. In third place, by a lot, is Senator Tim Scott. And beyond that, Nikki Haley's got very healthy numbers as well. Vivek's got healthy numbers, but he gave himself a lot of money. And I think that we will also see Chris Christie on the stage. He's got 40,000 donors. Not a lot of cash on hand. That's all that really matters to me. There are lots of stories about Ron DeSantis struggling to rebound from a terrible start. It has been less than a glorious start, but I also think people are overplaying the story because I got nothing else to write about in the summertime. And that Governor DeSantis doing an interview with Jake Tapper tomorrow night, maybe that's sort of his official kickoff because he's talking to legacy media. Jake is on today talking about his brand new book, All the Demons Are Here. Good read. Read it over the weekend. Kim Strassel will be here tomorrow. She's got the Biden malaise out. That's a great read. Read that yesterday. Matt Lewis is on Wednesday with Filthy Rich Politicians. Another fine read. So I was reading a lot this weekend, but what else are you going to do? When I mean rain, I don't mean a shower here and a shower there. The only time it wasn't raining was Saturday morning, and I knifed my way through. Do not buy into. There's only one hard and fast fact about presidential candidate right now, that Donald Trump is the front runner by a lot. And the second truth, debates can change everything. I am firmly of the opinion, I've told the former president this, he ought to attend every debate. He actually did an interview with Maria Bartiromo yesterday where he talked about doing every debate and why it's not really fair that he be obliged to do so. Fair isn't the question. Fair is really beside the point. Is it smart to do it? Cut number 6, Donald Trump talking with Maria Bartiromo yesterday.
Well, you know, it's quite an easy question normally. Ronald Reagan didn't do it, and a lot of other people didn't do it. When you have a big lead, you don't do it. And we have a lead of 50 and 60 points in some cases, and some of these people are at 0. Ron DeSantis, as I call him, or DeSanctimonious, is down to, he's in the teens now, and I'm at 50 and 60 and 65, and even I saw one today at 70. And so you're leading people by 50 and 60 points, and you say, why would you be doing a debate? It's actually not fair. Why would you let somebody that's at 0 or at 1 or 2 or 3, be popping you with questions?
Well, I mean, do you see any risk that if you don't show up, Ron DeSantis has a good night and it cuts into your lead?
Or somebody else has a good night and cuts into his lead. because that's what's happening. He's going down, and a couple of them are going up. I think Vivek has done a very good job, frankly. I think some others have done a good job. So I haven't really made up my mind.
Is there anyone on that stage you see as potential running mate, as your VP?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, I think you have some good people on the stage, actually. I think you have some very talented people. I've been impressed by some of them. Some of them I'm very friendly with, actually. A number of them called me up, not to ask for permission, but sort of to ask for permission, to say they'd like to do it. A number of the people up there, I'm not going to embarrass them by saying who, but no, I think you have good people. I think you have good potential cabinet members, too, actually.
Who is that?
Well, I don't want to mention that. I think I can't.
Do you see yourself perhaps with the Senator Tim Scott?
I think he's a very good guy. We did opportunity zones together. It's never been talked about. It's one of the most successful economic development things ever done in this country. And Tim is very good. I mean, I could see Tim doing something with the administration, but he's right now campaigning, and I'm sure Tim and everybody else would say, I'm only interested in one. But Tim's a talented guy, and you have other very talented people.
Do you have a plan to get independents and suburban women to believe that your policies will make their lives better?
It's called safety. It's called the border. It's called a strong military. It's called low taxes and low interest rates so you can buy a home. It's called keeping low-income housing out of the neighborhood of somebody that's very proud of their house in Westchester, New York, and they don't want to see their house value crash, which I did previously. But it's really about safety, and it's about low taxes, and it's about not going into ridiculous wars. You would have never had the war with Ukraine and Russia had I been involved. You would have never had this talk with China going into Taiwan. Just wouldn't have happened. And it didn't happen. Actually, even the Democrats say, well, whatever you want to say about them, it wouldn't have happened.
Now, if you are a subscriber to The Universe, I'll play a lot more of the Maria Bartiromo interview, as well as Ron DeSantis on yesterday with Howie Kurtz, and we had Chris Christie on ABC and on CNN. Got lots of cuts, but that's for the grand old pod. That's for people who listen to The Universe. Because I ain't got enough time today. I got to do the news. I'll continue doing the news after the break. And I've got to play Robert Kennedy Jr. for you folks out there today in the next segment. But if you're a member of The Universe, you get the grand old pod from me on Mondays and Wednesdays. You get John Campbell, former Congressman Campbell, with Generalissimo on Tuesdays. You get Lilacs with Generalissimo on Thursday. You get Ed Morrissey doing the Week in Review with Generalissimo on Friday. Generalissimo will be back sometime today. I'm not sure when he's coming back. His vacations are always a little bit accordion-like, right? You never know how far they're going to stretch out. So I was up early getting all this stuff done today, but he'll be back. And we got Kamala Harris. In fact, I got to play Kamala for you. Contrast former President Trump with Vice President Harris today. Cut number 1.
Think about the impact on something like public health. When we invest in clean energy and electric vehicles and reduce population, more of our children can breathe clean air and drink clean water.
Reduce population. Reduce population. Did they actually have that in the teleprompter, or did she make that up? There are times I wonder, what in the world is she talking about? Reducing population. The United States does not want to reduce population. One of the reasons we want to reform the immigration system and selectively bring to the United States those people who want to come, who have talent, skills, and sets, not, ollie in free over the border, but aggressively recruiting the best and the brightest from around the globe, is we need more people. You need people in the 21st century. We do not want to reduce population, but that's kind of like a throwback to the 80s, 90s Malthusian dilemma stuff. Nuts. Just completely nuts. As is Bobby Kennedy Jr., I'll play that for you next on the Monday edition of the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay tuned. The sun is coming up, whether or not you can see it. I don't know if it's raining where you are, but it stopped raining in Maine, and so I'm happy the sun is coming up. Next week, this is my last calm week. Genghis Kate arrives to loot, pillage, and plunder next week. So I'm going to go to Florida to the ALEC conference, the American Legislative Exchange Council. They are doing richstatespoorstates.com again, and richstatespoorstates.org, richstatespoorstates.org, and Generalissimo and I are packing up in 10 days and going to Orlando, where it's probably going to be even more humid. Generalissimo, do you realize you just came back from Tennessee? Did you wander in yet? Are you there?
I am here.
Okay, so we're doing the Orlando thing with Alec in 10 days, right?
Yes.
And are you going to go to Disney World when you're down there because you're woke, Dwayne?
Yes, I am. I am bringing an ad one who is the miscellaneous random person male edition at our house, who is the theme park fiend. Yes, we are probably going to do at least a couple of the new rides, and there's a Busch Gardens down there he has not been to.
You are going to help set up the show, though, right?
I'm there for my day job, but we're probably going to stay over an extra day or so and come back Sunday. Probably.
You're just a vacation king.
Oh, shut up! Look who's talking.
I haven't had a day off in 2 years.
Are you really want to stick with that one? There,
Rich
Sparky?
states, poor states. You are the rich vacation. I'm the poor vacation guy. Rich states, poor states.
This is the first true vacation week I've taken since my honeymoon.
Do we have Beaker around?
No, we
please?
don't.
Can we get Beaker?
We lost it.
Adam, we lost Beaker?
We lost Beaker.
How could we have lost Beaker? I need Beaker for half the guests today. Look, so you're going to Orlando with me. I want to know, since you came in, you were in Tennessee on vacation last week.
Correct.
I did the myphdweightloss.com, and Adam didn't think you'd be at 195 or less when you came back.
I'm actually right about there.
That's not a yes, is it? Right about there.
Look, I have to wait until this morning when I wake up after the show to be able to do the actual weight or the weigh-in at the appropriate
You're buying time. I hear what you're saying. You're buying time.
No, it's
you didn't
not,
do a weigh-in yesterday.
It's like a real estate comp in a market that that's not the same market. I have to do it at the same time on a given day. I will weigh in
buying time. Buying time. MyPhDweightloss.com. You're like the wrestler trying to make weight. Are you going to go to a sauna somewhere?
No, I'm not going to go sweat it out between now and then.
Just get on a bicycle, put on a rubber suit, do all that kind of stuff. We had a football coach at Kennedy High School in Warren, Ohio, Tony Napolet, who always was a little bit overweight. Great man.
Yeah.
He's gone now, went to the Lord. But he would always wear one of those rubber suits around practice because they talked themselves into the idea that sweating would somehow lose weight. It doesn't. My PhD weight loss does not rely on any gimmicks at all, right?
No, absolutely not. It's
864-644-1900.
That's 864-644-1900.
As of a week ago, Friday, Dwayne had lost more than 45 and not quite 50 pounds. And
I had lost 50. I maintained 45.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that was as of 10 days ago. Then you went down and ate boar in the back of Schroeder's yard.
Actually, I think I'm okay. We'll see if I'm within 2 or 3 pounds of having to lose a smidge, but actually,
a smidge,
a skosh, a half of an iota.
Okay,
yes.
We'll see. It works. It does work.
Here's what I can tell. Here's what I can tell. The shirt still fits. The pants still fit.
Nah.
I'm okay.
If you go to Dollywood and all you do is eat cotton candy like Dolly's hair, you're in trouble.
You don't even know.
Let me also remind people, we are doing a straw poll in July and August. We're going to mark this up through the first debate. We want to get the first tranche in, so you have 10 more days left. HughStrawPoll.com. HughStrawPoll.com. HUGH strawpoll.com. Every Salem host, every Salem outlet, town hall, hot air, red state, even Mike Gallagher is doing it, and I think both of his listeners have already been polled.
You're going to keep those legit. You're not going to make it a push poll, right?
It's not a push poll, no. You can only vote once, I think, but you can vote. You can go over to Mike's site and vote if you want. That would be GallagherWantsYouToVote.com, and there you'll find Mike's place. But mine is very easy, HughStrawPoll.com, HughStrawPoll.com. Go there and check it out. Now, can I play Bobby Kennedy? Do I have enough time?
Yeah, do it quick.
All right, go. Cut number 15.
And we need to talk about bioweapons. I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19.
We'll play more when we come back. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Frank LaRose is Ohio's Secretary of State. He wants to be Ohio's senator. He wants to get the nomination to run against Sherrod Brown. Good morning, Frank. Welcome to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Good morning, Hugh.
Now, we have never met, but you are from the land. And first, I want to say you are a member of the 101st Airborne. You are a Green Beret, and I thank you for your service there. You're a graduate of The Ohio State University. Are you a Browns fan?
Lifelong Browns fan, long-suffering
All right.
Browns fan. In fact, we're on our way to Cleveland right now.
You have not suffered as long as I have, and I still have 4 tickets on the 50. This is the year, though, Secretary LaRose. Give us your bio. And by the way, which high school? Are you in Akron, St. Vincent, St. Mary's, or are you Hoban? What are you?
My dad went to Hoban. I went to Copley High School, live out on the west side of Summit County as a kid growing up in Copley Township. And I was inspired by my Boy Scout leader to enlist in the Army. He was a World War II veteran, concentration camp liberator. So I signed up when I was 18, left for basic training, and never looked back. Had a wonderful experience, got a great education in the Army, but decided it was time for a formal education. Went to Ohio State, ran for the state Senate, and I've been keeping Ohio's elections honest as Secretary of State for the last 5 years.
And were you there during the Tressel years?
Absolutely. Some of the golden years, and a great guy, too.
Okay, so if you had to pick between Tressel, Urban, and Ryan Day to coach, who would you pick?
I like Tressel Ball. I like his style, too. He knows that the coach's job is not just to put a quality product on the field, but he mentors young men in a really remarkable way.
Well, we like all three, but we are urban friendly here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Frank LaRose, tell people why you are running for the Senate nomination, especially when you're up against 2 experienced candidates with a whole bunch of money.
Well, I'm concerned about the direction of our country. Listen, I'm a father of 3 young girls. I'm the only candidate in this race who's the father of school-age children. And I'm just not going to let the left try to, ruin this country. It seems like what's happening. Sherrod's not going to be easy to beat, but I'm the only one in the race that has a history of winning statewide elections, which I've done 4 times. And I'm confident I can do that again so that we can put our country back on the right track.
So how do you get traction against Matt Dolan, who's sort of running center right, and Bernie Moreno, who's kind of running with J.D. Vance on the Trump right? How do you get any traction?
Well, listen, I was proud to have President Trump's endorsement last year. I was the only Secretary of State in the nation to get it. And I've got a very clear conservative voting record. In fact, I'm the only one in the race that is 100% pro-life, 100% pro-Second Amendment, have a long history of streamlining regulations, cutting taxes. That's what I did in the state Senate. And, I believe that we'll start off with a strong lead in the polls because Ohioans know me. I've been to all 88 counties multiple times, and I've earned their trust in the past. I'll do this again. I'm the only battle-tested candidate in this race, and I'm ready to go beat Sherrod Brown.
All right, I'm a son of Warren, Ohio. Have you been to the hot dog shop?
I have.
All right, just checking the boxes off. Frank, what's in it for Warren if you win? I always ask all the candidates that. What's in it for Warren?
It's the economy. The Biden administration has been making a mess of things. Sherrod Brown is every bit complicit in that. They think that the solution to inflation is trillions of dollars of spending and a now $32 trillion national debt, 70,000 IRS agents. That's absolute nonsense. We need to unleash the free market economy in Ohio, and that's only going to happen if we can make the tax cuts from the previous administration permanent. Those are set to expire in just 2 years. And we need to unleash American prosperity. And again, that only happens when we take back the U.S. Senate and fire Sherrod Brown. I think I'm the man to do that.
So, Frank, how old are you?
I'm 44.
I thought so. Okay, so you're a youngster, actually. When did you get into politics?
Well, I I got out of the Army in 2007. I was a non-traditional college student, so I was too old to join a fraternity at 28 years old. So I ended up working on political campaigns. Graduated with a business degree from Ohio State. My head was saying, go earn a living in business. My heart said to go run for office. I went back to Summit County. As you know from Warren, Summit County's pretty deep blue, and I was able to win a surprise victory in the state Senate. And so really started in 2011 when I first ran for the state Senate.
Now, in terms of the education system, are your kids in public school, private school? What do they do?
Yeah, all three children are in public schools. We live in a great neighborhood where they can walk to their school, and we've got an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and an 11-year-old.
Do you like the new school choice bill that was signed into law in Ohio?
I do. This is smart. I've been a school choice proponent for a long time, and listen, I'm a fan of public education, but competition makes us stronger. Works that way on the athletic field. It works that way in the free market. And government-run schools in too many parts of this country are failing our children. The way that we can have the meritocracy that we want to have in this country is by truly having great public schools available for all children. That means that the zip codes you live in shouldn't determine what kind of education you get. Parents deserve to have a choice, and that's exactly what they're doing now in Ohio, and it's a good thing.
What is your website, Frank?
FrankLaRose.com. FrankLaRose.com.
What is the ethnicity of LaRose? Is it Italian-American?
No, sir. Sicilian. We're from.
Oh, okay. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, all the people in Niles give me that stuff too, but I just got to figure it out. I just wanted to know for sure. So are you Catholic?
Yes, sir. Yeah, born and raised Catholic. Had a kind of a diverse religious upbringing. My mom's Presbyterian, my dad's Catholic. I worked on a farm in the summers in Alabama and then went to the Southern Baptist Church, so kind of had a mix of all three, but we're raising our children in the Roman Catholic Church.
We've got exactly the opposite with my dad being a Presbyterian, my mom being Catholic. What did you go to Alabama for?
A relative, a family member, owned a farm down there in northern Alabama, Sand Mountain area, and they called me Frankie the Yankee down there. It was a lot of fun. Learned farm work.
Did you wear your the Ohio State University T-shirt down there among the Roll Tide folks?
Proudly, no question about it. And as a member of the Ohio diaspora, I should say we're accepting repatriations if you ever want to come back.
Well, I'm actually not until you get to a flat tax. You got to be. I don't know what the income tax got cut to, but I'm in Virginia now, and I left California at 13.5 to go to 5.5 in Virginia, and Glenn Youngkin's making it lower. What is the plan in Ohio on taxes?
Well, our state legislature has been whittling away at it. I'm proud that during the time I was there, we got to do over $8 billion worth of tax cuts in the state. That's a good thing, and we've been working at that for a long time. Part of the problem in Ohio is there's so many different layers of taxation as well. It's not just state taxation, but also local, and then all these taxing jurisdictions, sewer districts and park districts and all these other things, not to mention school districts. But I was proud that we eliminated the death tax in Ohio. That was one of the first votes that I got to cast, and there needs to be something done just like that at the federal level as well.
I agree. Now, tell me about two questions. I will come to Ohio to moderate debates if the three of you will get together on a state. Are you in, Frank? Because I did it for the Senate race last time around.
100%. Hugh, listen, I'm somebody that believes in a free market of ideas. I'm not afraid to get up on the stage with these other two candidates and discuss with them the issues of the day. And I'm confident that we can have a good civil discussion and remember Reagan's 11th commandment.
Well, on that point, former President Trump endorsed you. I think he's endorsed Bernie. Has he already endorsed Bernie Moreno in this race?
Nope. No, he has not. And I'm not so sure he will. I believe I can earn that endorsement. But listen, the endorsement I really want is the endorsement of millions of Ohioans when I'm asking for their vote in this year-long job interview.
So when you ran for Sec State, was the first time 2 years ago or 6 years ago?
2018 is the first time I ran.
2018, 6 years. What are your margins of victory?
We won by a relatively narrow margin in 2018. It was about 5%. Much stronger margin last year with the overwhelming Republican victory that we had in Ohio. But Hugh, here's something to notice. Sherrod Brown's been hard to beat over the years. I actually got 100,000 more votes than he did, when I ran for re-election last year rather. And so that shows in the net numbers I can outperform Sherrod Brown, and that's something that I intend to do.
So what's going to differentiate you from Matt Dolan and Bernie Moreno?
Well, again, I'm the only one in the race who's actually a lifelong conservative. I'm running against two former Democrats, quite honestly. And, the voting record that Senator Dolan has is, I think, going to make it impossible for him to win a Republican primary. And, Bernie can say whatever he wants, but I'm the one that's battle-tested and proven, 100% pro-life voting record, 100% pro-Second Amendment voting record. And unlike the other candidates in the race, I can say that I have never once voted to raise taxes. In fact, I've voted to cut taxes. Plus, Ohioans know me. I bring a lot of deep relationships from around the state. I'm an Eagle Scout. I'm a Green Beret. And by the way, if we're successful, I'll be the first Green Beret in the U.S. Senate. And in an everly increasing dangerous world, I think having that special operations experience in the U.S. Senate may be an important thing.
Yeah, my son works for Mike Waltz, who's the only serving Green Beret in the House. And so I hear that about that experience. I think it's very valuable. You got a lot of special operators in the House, and you got some in the Senate, but no Green Berets. Where did you deploy, Frank, when you were in?
Yeah, my first deployment was actually to Kosovo in the NATO peacekeeping operations there. I was an engineer at the time. As a Green Beret, went to Morocco and Oman doing some training for our allies over there. But my combat deployment was in Iraq, where my team was training the Iraqi police and helping them prepare for the important work of protecting their own country. It was a really rewarding experience. I lost 2 teammates while we were there, but other than that, it was actually a very rewarding experience.
What did you make of President Biden's scamper out of Afghanistan?
It was absolutely embarrassing. It didn't have to be done that way. And think about that C-17 crew taking off, looking out that window and seeing people hanging from their fuselage. That pilot had to make a decision. Do I push this throttle forward and kill these people on the aircraft, or do I pull this throttle backward and risk having my aircraft overrun by this mob of desperate people? That should have never happened. The Biden administration completely flubbed that, and it was an absolute embarrassment. Not to mention a lot of our allies in the country, meaning interpreters, contractors, some of these people that fought side by side with us. A lot of my Green Beret brothers have been organizing Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups and that kind of thing to try to find these guys and get them out of the country, including their families. It was embarrassing, and it didn't have to happen that way.
Ohio Secretary of State Frank LaRose, thank you for joining me. Again, the website is franklarose.com if you want to support Frank. And I will be in Ohio. I'll be in the Buckeye State moderating debates, I hope, during this cycle between LaRose, Bernie Moreno, Matt Dolan, and we'll have some fun because I actually know Buckeye stuff pretty well. And I think they all have the Ohio State University credentials. Not sure, but we'll find out. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned. Back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Salena Zito is here for the Yinzer Report, as she is every Monday. Good morning, Salena. How are you?
Good morning, sunshine. How are you?
I am great. Just talked to Frank LaRose. And have you gone across the line? Did you show your papers and get into Ohio yet to talk to Secretary of State LaRose?
No, I have not. Well, yeah, I've been in Ohio, but I have not talked to him yet.
Okay, so from afar, I mean really afar, you can't get much further apart than Pittsburgh and Ohio. How do you think that Senate race is shaping up?
I think that the Republicans have 2. I don't know if the third gentleman has announced yet, the Speaker of the State House, but I think
yes,
that they have
Matt Dolan, LaRose is Secretary of State, and Bernie Moreno is the businessman. They are all declared.
That all very good candidates. I don't think that the Republicans have a bad candidate in the bunch. They're all very smart, very politically talented, but also policy wonks. And I think that any one of them will be formidable against Sherrod Brown. And I wrote about Brown.
If I can get your passport updated, will you come over and co-host a debate with me and Aaron Bear?
Absolutely.
That would be kind of fun.
It would be hysterical. We should have a cookie table at the debate, though.
Cookie table, but leave that Steelers gear behind. Aaron Bear's got a Steelers fan for a wife, so just leave that stuff behind. We cannot have that. Tell us about your sit-down with Ron DeSantis last week.
It was an impromptu interview. It was at the Moms for Liberty event at the Marriott in downtown Philadelphia. And I thought neither one of us it just happened to happen. And I thought that it turned out great. He talked about not just about the importance of the female vote, the women's vote, and the issues that are important to them. But he also talked about the fact that it's important. We're in a very divisive era. Both parties are are having struggles in terms of what do you do once you get into the general, and how do you bring people together. So he talked about that and the importance of that. And he's said he's in for the long run. Every day there's a news story. Oh, he's behind Trump. Oh, he's not going to catch Trump. And I often wonder if my profession is just really anxious to write the story, the comeback story, right? We love to write the comeback story. Remember John McCain in 2008? There are photos of him carrying a suitcase alone in the airport. John Kerry in Iowa in 2004. This is just what we do at times. Sometimes we can't help ourselves. I think that this primary is open. I think no one is inevitable. And I think it's going to be a very robust campaign.
Let me channel Donald Trump. The former president says, I'm 40, 50, 60 points ahead. Why should I debate? What's your answer, Salena Zito?
If I was advising him, I would tell them the same thing. However, if I'm a voter, I would say, oh, no. We want to see it all. We want to see the back and forth. We want to see the who takes command of the issues, who takes command of the stage, who takes command of what is important to us. Voters are always looking for that person that brings people, that is aspirational, right? And if there's anyone in the race right now that is the most aspirational, it's Tim Scott. And so I think it's important to have that back and forth. Now, I understand as a strategist why you would say, oh, no, you don't do that. However, when you step back and you look as a voter, you want to see that. You want to see that debate. You want to see how people handle themselves with him and on their own.
What do you say to the idea that he'll skip one or two, but then he'll show up once the field narrows?
I'm in the camp that everyone should debate that qualifies to be on the stage, personally, because as the way I report things, I try to look at how a voter wants to see it, right? I understand a strategist's points of view. I understand the importance of keeping him out of there from their point of view, but I'm looking at it as a voter who wants to kick everyone's tire. That's what they want to see. They want to see the debate.
Quick question, Yinzer talk. Has McCormick been around? Dave McCormick been in Pittsburgh? Is he working it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's been all over the state. He's been working the small sort of county chairs, but also going to those all-important parish picnics. You know how important they are, and county fairs, and just doing the really grassroots level thing. I also know he has a couple daughters to send off to college this year, so I think he has that in between the other.
Salena Zito, thank you. Follow her on Twitter at Zito Salena, and go to SalenaZito.com for everything that she writes, including a write-up of her sit-down impromptu with Governor DeSantis of Florida. Studio North, Tim Sheehy is running for Senate in the great state of Montana. He joins me this morning. Good morning, Tim. Welcome to the program.
Morning, Hugh. Thanks for having me.
Tell us about you first, because we got to win Montana. We absolutely got to beat John Tester. So tell us about Tim Sheehy.
No, you're right. It's mission critical. We finally beat John. So my wife and I, my wife's name's Carmen. We live in just outside of Bozeman, Montana, in Belgrade. We were both in the military. I was a Navy SEAL officer. She was a Marine officer. I got wounded a few times on and off the battlefield. We ended up getting out of the military in 2014 and starting our family, our businesses there in Montana. Created a few hundred jobs in industries ranging from aerospace technology to aviation to agriculture. And a few months ago, was approached by some of our folks in the state to say, hey, we need someone to beat John Tester. We need a different profile this time. We like your business background and we like your military background. Would you be willing to do this? And my wife and I had to reflect on it quite a bit, but no question, it's a turning point for the nation. We have about 10 years, I think, to arrest some of the dangerous trends we're seeing and get this country back on track. So it's time to serve again. We need a new generation of leaders in this country, I believe, and we're ready to serve.
Tim, you are endorsed by a lot of my friends. Tom Cotton, Steve Daines, Governor Gianforte. You've got have you cleared the field? Anyone going to take you on in the Republican primary?
Obviously I can't predict the future. I'm not sure. So far, it's just me, and it looks like we have a lot of great support. So we're hoping it stays that way so we can stay focused on the real mission here, which is John Tester.
All right, now I posted your website, but why don't you give it to people? It's on my Twitter account. Tell them how to find you if they want to contribute.
Yeah, timformt.com, timformt.com. They can learn more about me personally, our story, and what this campaign's about, which is about leadership and service.
Tim, let's start with bio. I'm sure I'm going to talk to you 20 times. And so each time I'll ask you about issues and about John Tester. But let's start with bio. Where were you born and grow up?
Grew up in Minnesota, joined the military when I was 18, went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, and commissioned into the Navy SEAL teams. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, actually, in the Navy. That was my dream and desire. But during the wars in the Middle East, it was pretty clear that it was going to be a ground war, and I wanted to be, as a leader, at the point of most impact that I could be, and that was going to be on the ground. That was going to be at the tip of the spear with our elite Special Operations Forces. So I was proud to be part of the Special Operations community. Did several deployments around the world. Was privileged to lead some fantastic men and women on battlefields from Iraq, Afghanistan, South America, and elsewhere around the world. So, was a privilege to lead Americans. And then once I was injured and got out, decided to take those leadership skills and apply it to business, and started a business in my barn with my co-founder, also a veteran, and created a couple hundred jobs right there in Montana, a few hundred jobs worldwide, and in critical industries like aerial firefighting, which protects Americans all across the West each summer, and also defense technology, providing defensive systems for our troops overseas against drones that were built by Iran and the ISIS forces during the fight against ISIS, and of course also other businesses like agriculture technology.
Senator Tester likes to say he's just a Montana dirt farmer. It's nonsense, of course. He's been in D.C. for 12 years now. But he's going to attack you as a carpetbagger, I assume. Why did you move to Montana after your naval service?
So, we had some family there growing up, but for the most part, I'd go there training prior to deployments over to the Middle East. So especially during the second Afghan invasion, which is what we all called it, the 2009 through the end of the war, where we reinvaded Afghanistan after largely ignoring it for about 8 years. And before heading back in, most of us had only at that point deployed to Iraq or other points in the Middle East, and had to go to Montana to train some of those specific skills in mountain warfare, high-angle shooting, high-angle rope rescue, swift water rescue, all the different mountain warfare skills that are pretty critical to have. So really fell in love with the state. My wife came and visited me there a number of times during those training missions. And after I was injured, we decided, hey, we got to get out. We both loved the Mountain West. We loved Montana. Let's start our family there. To be honest, it had been a tough few years. We saw each other about 45 days over 6 years during the wars, because she was deploying as well as I was. And we were ready to start our family and start our business. So we set down roots there with no intention of ever getting into politics. Of course, here we are, 9 years later.
Is she USNA as well?
Correct. That's where we met.
Okay. Oh, you met at the Academy? I've never heard of that actually before. Tell me a little bit about the business that you do, Tim.
So I started Bridger Aerospace in 2014 in our barn. We literally were living in our barn, building it at the time. And me and my co-founder, who was also a veteran, wanted to take the aerial surveillance capability that I'd used overseas. As a team on target, you'd have aircraft above you with infrared cameras, and they'd tell you what's going on the ground underneath you. I wanted to take that capability, which was life-saving and a force multiplier for us on the ground, and apply that to other tasks outside the military. And that's where Bridger Aerospace came from. We ended up becoming one of the largest aerial firefighting companies in the nation. And during that time, we developed some advanced sensor technology in-house that we invented as part of the company. And that technology we ended up converting into some DoD sensors that were able to protect our troops during the fight against ISIS when they were flying composite styrofoam plastic drones at our troops with explosives on them. Our existing air defense systems could not see or detect those aircraft. So we developed a system to be able to see, locate, and destroy those aircraft. The system was very successful. If you remember in 2019 when President Trump ordered the Iranian drone shot down the Straits of Hormuz, that system and that family of systems was invented by our team in Belgrade, Montana, manufactured in Montana, and became one of the most successful counter-UAS air defense systems in the world. We ended up selling that company. It grew quite rapidly, and we really had to pass it on to a large defense prime to be able to handle those contracts. But Bridger Aerospace, which we spun that company out of, has continued to serve America and really the world with our fleet of Super Scoopers and aerial surveillance aircraft. And I'm an active pilot there. I fly our Super Scoopers. I'm a water bomber pilot. I'll be on duty next week in Idaho, fighting fires all over the American West and Canada.
Right now, California's burning, and they got 4 down in Riverside County. Do you operate in California, or do they have DEI requirements that you're not allowed because you're a service member?
Yeah, CRT. I'm not transgender, so I guess I can't fly the plane in California. But no, it's we operate nationwide, all 50 states and Canada as well. We also are expanding in some other territories internationally.
Tim Sheehy, I am kind of amazed by that. I know some entrepreneurs in Montana, but to start from scratch and go that fast, who was your super smart genius to do the design work?
Well, everybody around me was the smart ones. I just happened to be the guy in the middle, drinking coffee, watching it happen. So, my brother, Matt Sheehy, has been a great entrepreneurial friend and advisor to me my whole life. My parents, of course, have been great mentors. And then my co-founder and wife, of course, is the best partner in the world. So, and then, to be honest, in Montana, the reason we chose the Bozeman-Belgrade area is MSU. Montana State University is a fantastic engineering school. There were a number of locations around the state we looked at. We chose the Bozeman area specifically because of MSU. Fantastic engineering school, a lot of access to some talented interns there. And I didn't have any money, so I wasn't going to be able to pay anybody. So I said, listen, I need access to a lot of nerds that I can get for cheap. So
who want to stay in Montana?
Yeah, exactly. And, they were a fantastic group of workers for us. We gave them all equity in the company. So, as we took one company public on the NASDAQ, we sold one company, and we made sure that I think through that time we've created, a couple of dozen millionaires and hundreds of multi-hundred-thousandaires because we've always shared that equity with everyone in the company. And, the two core groups that have been critical for our success have been veteran employees. We've hired vets right out of service and put them right onto our roster, and they've done an amazing job. And then, MSU students. So it's been an exciting ride. And actually, part of the reason I'm here, you asked who helped us out. Governor Gianforte was one of the first guys that when I started my business, it's a very lonely time starting a business. Everyone thinks you're going to fail. And he heard it was a guy starting a tech business in Bozeman. He came over, spent a couple hours with me, said, listen, I started a tech business in Montana. Here are the things to think about. Here's what to do. Here's what not to do. Here's my number. Call me anytime. I want to see you succeed. And he became a friend and advisor through that time. And, I deeply respected that. And then Ryan Zinke, our congressman, pinned my Purple Heart on me when I was a SEAL. And through those two gentlemen, met Steve Daines and became personal friends with these three guys over the years and saw how much they deeply cared about Montana business and about growing Montana businesses and jobs. And, that's certainly part of our DNA and part of the reason I'm here.
Wait, can I ask you which team you deployed with, Mr. Sheehy?
Yeah, I was on several different teams. I was an officer, so in the SEAL teams, the officers bounce around a bit, which definitely gives us, us enlisted guys that will rub each other over that because oftentimes, they'll camp out at a team for years or even decades, and us officers have to bounce around to all these different organizations. But
were you East Coast or West Coast?
Yeah, I was an East Coast guy. Yep, and then did some time. We have a specialized team out in Hawaii too, which I was there for a bit as well. And then actually,
I know one of your Hawaii buddies. Hey, Tim Sheehy, give us the website quickly one more time.
Yeah, timformt.com, timformt.com. Learn more, and I appreciate the time.
We will come back. We'll talk often and early about John Tester next time. Wanted to get the bio. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for running. Tim Sheehy is going to be our next senator from Montana, America. Get on board early and come right back. The second hour rolls along on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Boy, am I busy today. Coming up, Admiral Stav, Josh Kraushaar. Next hour, Will Hurd is running for president. Jake Tapper got a brand new book out. All the Demons Are Here. Salena Zito, too, has read it and loved it. Talking with Jake at the bottom of hour number 3 today. Lots of it. I got to, though, remind you, don't forget HughStrawPoll.com, HughStrawPoll.com. Every outlet that we've got, Hot Air, the Grand Old Pod, every host on the Salem Network, all of our local hosts, we are all doing a straw poll in July and August to compare, get a baseline July before one debate, then see how it changes over the course of August, if at all. So you'll be able to vote again in August. But go to Hugh Straw Poll right now. Mike Gallagher got both of his listeners to poll, so I would like my millions of listeners to please go and vote. And it's very humbling for Mike, but he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind. If he gets both of his people to show up, he's very happy with that. And, gosh, I love Mike. I got to go see him in Tampa. The Gallagher Palace in Tampa is something to see. It stands out on the skyline, unlike anything you've seen before. And Studio Gallagher South. That's our Studio South. We have a Studio North, Studio Beltway, Studio West, and Studio South. But Gallagher never leaves Florida, except to go to New York occasionally to do some Broadway stuff. Or he go out on the road, but he doesn't leave very often. I got to play for you Bobby Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., on tape talking about the coronavirus. Give a listen.
And we need to talk about bioweapons. I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and you know the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure of genetic differentials among different races of the receptors of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. But we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted that or not. But there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential and impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what all of those labs in the Ukraine are about. They're collecting Russian DNA, they're collecting Chinese DNA, so that we can target people by race. And we need to talk about...
I got to say, I was asked back when Robert Kennedy Jr. published his book on COVID why I did not have him on. And it's because I do not believe Robert Kennedy Jr. has any credibility at all on anything. And I would urge Democrats, do not vote for him. You might be COVID skeptical. You might be vaccine skeptical. And you got people like Jay Bhattacharya who will back you up on parts of your skepticism. Stick with the Jay Bhattacharyas. Avoid the Robert Kennedy stuff. That is cracked. That's anti-Semitic, it's anti-Chinese, it's cracked. And although I believe the likeliest source of the virus is a leak from the Wuhan lab, I do not believe it was genetically engineered to kill everyone who wasn't Han Chinese or Ashkenazi Jew, because a whole bunch of ethnic Chinese died, and a whole bunch of Ashkenazi Jews died. And if you didn't notice, the state of Israel took it very, very seriously and got the vaccine distributed quickly. And I just think that's cracked. I'm not going to joke about it. It's bizarre. It's on tape. It's not deniable, and he will not be on this show because that is racist. Welcome back, America. 33 minutes after the hour. I'm joined by Admiral Stav. Admiral James Stavridis joins me, retired United States Navy, former Allied Supreme Commander of NATO. Good morning, Admiral. How are you?
Doing great, Hugh. How are you?
Good, but no new book from Stav this year? I mean, what's the deal? It's summer. I need a Stavridis book.
That's because I have two coming out next year. One is the sequel to 2034. It's 2054, a novel about artificial intelligence and war. That comes out in March. And then in the fall, I'm very excited to have a novel of historical fiction coming out about the Second World War. Yeah, complete departure for me.
Oh, very exciting. What part of the I just reread or actually listened to The Winds of War and War and Remembrance for writing a Washington Post column. Which part of the war? Because you can't woke.
Yeah, no, this starts in 1937 in Key West, Florida, with a young man who decides to go to the U.S. Naval Academy, and he graduates in 1941. And this book covers 37, his years at the Academy, 41, Pearl Harbor, obviously, and runs right up, but does not include the Battle of Philippine Sea. So the second volume, already under contract with Penguin Press Random House, will cover 44, 45 to the end of the war. And I envision a total of 5 books in the series. The challenge from the publisher was write the American version of Patrick O'Brien, not The Age of Sail, but World War II, heavily influenced by Herman Wouk, by the way.
Is your young sailor going to start on a destroyer like an admiral I know?
He does, and he begins on a destroyer, but then quickly is pulled up to an aircraft carrier. He serves in the Big E, the Enterprise, through much of the war.
All right, now, Admiral, I am.
He does start with Arleigh Burke in Guadalcanal. That's the first taste of combat he experiences.
Does this get to the Lady Gulf?
It does not. This volume will stop right before Lady Gulf. Philippine Sea, Lady Gulf will be the opener of the second volume, which I'm very excited to write. As you know, it's a very controversial naval battle.
Well, when I re-listened to Woke, I had forgotten, it's been 30 years or 40 years, and I had forgotten that he was so critical of Admiral Halsey. He really was very critical of Admiral Halsey. Are you?
I am. I think the Navy is kind of divided between Team Halsey and Team Spruance in terms of who was the great admiral of the Pacific War at that level, just below Nimitz, who we all agree was the great admiral. But just below Nimitz, as you know, Nimitz alternated command of those fast carrier task forces between Halsey and Spruance. Halsey had his purposes. I would take Spruance for the long throw.
Yeah, I also was surprised to remember how complimentary he was in a backhanded, subtle way of CNO King. Because I wrote Jerry Hendricks, our mutual friend, I said, is there a biography of King? There are biographies of Marshall, Nimitz, and Eisenhower, and I'm re-listening to American Caesar right now. But did anyone ever write about King?
Yes. The great book about King is by a man named Thomas Buell. It's called Master of Sea Power, and it's a very balanced look at King. As you know, he was a very tough character. My favorite line, by the way, from Admiral King is the following: the mark of a great ship handler is never getting in a situation that requires great ship handling. It is that ability to project yourself. Isn't that a great line? That's King. Yeah, everybody disliked him. He invented his own uniform. He was this immense character. Com Sink, was his title, commander of the overall fleet, and he was a handful. Thomas Buell, Master of Sea Power. While I'm on Thomas Buell, I have to mention Buell also wrote the best biography of Spruance, with a great title also. It's called The Quiet Warrior, Raymond Spruance.
How do you spell Buell?
Buell, Buell.
All right, good to know that. Now, Admiral, I need some help. I'm writing a Washington Post column, and I want to persuade Senator Tuberville to drop this hold. And I want to persuade him that it's very bad for everybody, not just the general officers and the admirals, but for everybody in the uniformed services. Am I right? And what's the best argument to make to him?
You are right. And I think the best argument is that everyone is focused on this tiny, relatively tiny, few hundred handful of 4-stars. But every one of those 4-star moves is linked to a 3-star move. That 4-star who promotes into that job is replaced by a 3-star, and that officer is replaced by a 2-star, and that officer by a 1-star. And you walk it back down to all of the military people that are completely frozen in place as a result of this, and it's immensely distracting to national security. That's argument one. Argument two, I would hope it would appeal to a former superb football coach like Senator Tuberville, is simply organizations need stable leadership. They need to know who's in charge. And when you have an acting in charge for what could be an extended period of time, it is extremely deleterious to that organization. Would he want a football team that had an acting coach that was always looking over their shoulder or wondering when the real coach was going to show up? I think those are the two really powerful arguments that certainly resonate for me, and I hope ultimately they resonate for Senator Tuberville.
You know, I've been working on the opening, and I right now I'm thinking of every soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine has a unique story, as does every American. But their unique story is they put themselves under the authority of everybody in the chain of command. And the spouses, children, and parents of those people expect that they will be led as well as possible because they're in harm's way. And so he's endangering every member of the military by screwing around with the chain of command. Does that resonate with you?
100%. It's extremely well stated, and it broadens the pool of pain from the way he seeks to paint it. Oh, it's just a bunch of the brass. You know, they'll get over it in a few months. And now you see that pool of pain spreads, as you just put it so eloquently, across not only that chain of command coming behind them, but also the families, the supporters, everyone who's involved in this activity. And it's an immense drag on national security. And I am surprised that he goes this far. And by the way, I'll give you one other argument, which you may or may not want to get into. But if he succeeds in this, what happens when Senator Left Wing says, oh, I'm not going to approve any 4-star appointments until there's a 75% tax on everyone making more than $100,000 a year? Or Senator Hard Left Wing says, I'm not going to approve any positions in national security until the Department of Defense cuts its entire fuel budget down to zero. Once you go down this path of allowing a particular senator to take an issue about which he or she feels passionately, I get that, but boy, once you go down that path, wait until the left starts using it and others on the right, and you have dragged our national security dead into the center of the whirlpool of domestic controversy. That's not where we want to go.
You know, it does not affect any member of my family yet, but they are in the middle of a pack out right now, one of my kids. And packing out, I never knew about this as a civilian. It comes in two phases. You got the small pack out, you got the big pack out. It's just a nightmare. These poor men and women who are caught up in this, their spouses must want to go to Alabama and start picketing. I think he's going to get primaried over this because Alabama is kind of a military state, isn't it?
Oh my gosh, yes, of course. Huge functionality there. So many military come from that part of our country, and in particular, Alabama has a very strong reputation. By the way, as someone who is born into the military, into a Marine Corps family, I moved. Before I went to Annapolis, I moved 10 times when I was 17. And then I moved, Laura and I, in our 37-year career, moved 20 plus times. So I've been through a pack out 30 plus times. And it's no fun to begin with. And when you have immense uncertainty hanging over it, it's cruel and unusual punishment, Senator. Please.
Well, I'm going to use your pool of pain, Admiral, and I'm going to use cruel and unusual punishment as well. Mostly, though, it's not logical. My first draft was I dragged, if you remember that 70s show, Red Foreman used to say that's a dumbass move. I began that, then I tore it up because I really want to persuade him because I just don't, I think some staffer suggested this to him and it seemed like a good idea at the time. You know the first rule of holes, stop digging, right? And he can declare victory now because the House put it on the NDAA. He can walk away right now. Do you think he will?
I think he will, to be honest with you, for the powerful political reason that if he is allowed to truly drive this home through the entire NDAA, once it gets through the Senate, again, you are opening the door to immense mischief on both left and right. And I am hopeful that articles like yours that come from people like you who are kind of center right will be convincing to Senator Tuberville in a way that he is unconvinced, evidently, by those on the left who respond to this. So let's hope the entire political spectrum can agree that this is not how we want to do business with our national security. Hey, he's a football coach. This is not a game. This is not a game.
Let me close by asking about the overnight attack on the bridge connecting Russia to the Crimean Peninsula. How long does it take to repair that, do you think, Admiral?
I've just looked at some of the satellite photos, and I would say it's going to be weeks, if not months, before that bridge is structurally safe again. About half of it is dangling down into the water. The other half, I wouldn't want to be the guy driving the 5-ton over that one. So I think it's not a immense body blow, but it's significant. And by the way, here's the punchline. It'll slow down logistics going to where the Ukrainians are going to attack. It's clearly the point of this, was to slow down the ability of Russia to resupply. So watch for that summer offensive. I think it's going to start ramping up pretty quickly.
Admiral James Stavridis, retired, former NATO Allied Supreme Commander. Thank you. Looking forward to those 2 books next year. It's summertime. It is Stav book. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Josh Kraushaar is with Jewish Insider. Hello, Josh. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh.
Tell us what you make of the fundraising totals that were released over the weekend in detail.
Well, look, a lot of numbers to break down. Look, Ron DeSantis, I think a lot of people missed the fact that Ron DeSantis actually raised the most money in his campaign account, but there were a lot of caveats to that solid fundraising. Number one, a lot of it was front loaded. So much of the money was raised in that first week after he announced his candidacy, and it trailed off in the intervening month and a half. And a lot of it was also dependent on very big donors, people who gave the maximum amount possible to the campaign account, the Can't Give Again, and not a whole lot of small dollar donors to the DeSantis campaign. And when you couple that with news that he had to lay off some of his staff over the weekend, it's not an encouraging sign for the frontrunner, even though those top line numbers are pretty strong. I think another note from the president's fundraising account, he raised less than DeSantis. A lot of the money that the president raised was through the Democratic National Committee. And also Biden, a lot of trouble raising money from small dollar donors. Less money raised than Trump at this point in time, less money raised than Barack Obama at this point in time in the re-election. So I think there's a lot of caution. The overall top line number for Biden looked pretty good, but not a lot of excitement, not a lot of small dollar donors into his campaign account.
It's interesting. I did not set this up, Josh. We didn't talk beforehand. I was a bit surprised. Actually, I was shocked that former Vice President Pence does not have 40,000 donations and may not make the stage because he is the pro-lifer, right? He is Mr. Pro-Life and always has been resolutely. So I expected the Right to Life committee members to send him $10. Are you surprised by that?
A little bit. And I think it tells you a lot about where the kind of social conservative voter is right now. We've talked about this on the show before, Hugh. Do the pro-life Republicans reward Pence for his 100% support for the cause and his policy positions are 100% aligned with where they are, but they seem to be much more, if you look at the polling at least, much more aligned with Donald Trump. And no matter what happens in the news, no matter the fact that Trump is probably less committed to some of the pro-life agenda than a lot of the other Republican candidates, including Mike Pence, it does show you where the mood is of the party. And I think you saw that too with that, the Iowa confab over the weekend where Tucker Carlson was interviewing all the candidates, and Pence got a very not the warmest of responses amid.
I lived the 1980 campaign, and I lived the 1976 campaign, the Reagan campaigns, and I was in the administration, so I had to stay out of it in '84. But I read Kimberly Strassel's new book over the weekend called The Biden Malaise, and she gave me a new lens, which is who is doing it the Reagan way. Funny, upbeat, energetic, 11th commandment. Who do you think is running that kind of a campaign, Josh Kraushaar?
Well, look, Chris Christie, you could argue, is kind of the happy warrior going on the cable news show, right? I mean, and by the way,
no 11th commandment there. No 11th commandment at all. He brings a baseball bat.
But he's the warrior, happy warrior, if you will, but clearly not unifying the Republican Party. But Trump, Hugh, I don't know if that Republican Party can be unified. You do have these serious divisions on foreign policy. I think, as we've talked about on the show, most Republicans are for the supporting Ukraine, anti-Putin, like all the way. But you have those 75, 80 House Republicans that wanted to end support for Ukraine in the vote over the defense authorization bill. So there are a lot of divisions, and it's hard to kind of get that Reagan the 11th commandment to unify the entire party when the party is very much divided right now.
Budget hawks have always been at war with national security people, and that tripod existed during the Reagan years as well, but they quieted it down. That vote was roughly, I think, where we are. If we've got 49 senators and 220 Republicans in the House, it's roughly 1/4 of the party was anti-aid to the Ukraine. I think that is correct, about 25%. You think I'm right about that, Josh?
That vote was as good a tell as you could get about where the mood of the party is. And it was about, I think it was there were two amendments, one by Marjorie Taylor Greene, one by Matt Gaetz, both cutting or ending aid to Ukraine, only got 70 to 80 votes among 220. So that's about a third, a little less than a third, I think. So it's a faction. It's an outspoken faction, but one that is a minority within the Republican Party.
And I would add in, we got 49 Republican senators. I would guess 2 or 3 are against aid to Ukraine. And so if you add the whole legislative party together, I think it's less than 25%, which I think accurately reflects it. And then you've got some House members who are just voting the isolationist position in order to protect themselves, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I think the worry, though, Hugh, is that we're the new candidates. Where are the emerging candidates going to stand on Ukraine and on foreign policy? And there's a mix. We have a story actually in Jewish Insider this morning about a really top candidate for the Republicans in Nevada, Sam Brown, who served in Afghanistan, suffered serious injuries. His face was severely burned during his time overseas, but because of that experience, he has turned very, very much isolationist. And
interesting. Josh, we're out of time. Yeah. Follow Josh at Josh Kraushaar online at the Jewish Insider and come right back. Will Hurd is next. Good morning, Glory America, Bonjour, Hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live in Studio North. Jake Tapper coming along at the bottom of the hour, but I'm pleased to welcome to the program Will Hurd, former congressman, almost a decade in the CIA as well. Good morning, Congressman. Good to see you again.
Hey, Hugh. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate the time.
Well, I want to, full disclosure for people, Congressman Hurd and I had a wonderful dinner together in Aspen a few years back, along with then Undersecretary Hurd, Morgan Ortagus, Ambassador O'Brien. I liked him then. We got along great, but I do not understand what you're doing, Congressman, so tell me what you're up to.
Look, this isn't rocket science, Hugh. We live in complicated times and we need common sense. I think you know better than most. We are faced at a time where you have the Chinese government trying to surpass the United States of America as the global superpower. That's not my opinion. That's what they have written about themselves. since at least 2015. This is going to impact every single American. We have persistent inflation at a time when technologies like artificial intelligence is going to impact every single industry, not in 10 years, in 2, 3, 4 years. And we are at a time where our kids have the worst math, science, and reading scores in this century. These are real issues that if we don't address, we have the potential of being the United Kingdom of the 21st century, right? And I think our best days are still ahead of us. And we need people in elected office that are putting a vision forward for the future, not complaining and crying about the past. And yes, I'm a dark horse candidate, right? I know that. I understand that. But guess what? We got to do something different. When 6 out of 10 Americans don't want Donald Trump on the ballot and 7 out of 10 Americans don't want Joe Biden on the ballot, they're saying, hey, we want something different. We should have learned from 2020 election. The American public said, don't be a jerk and don't be a socialist. In 2022, the electorate told us, guess what? Candidates matter. And we have an opportunity as Republicans to actually have conservative thought for the next 12, 16 years. I don't want to win just one election and have conservative thought for 2 years. We have a real opportunity because conservative Democrats and independents are sick and tired of where the Democratic Party is going. So we have an opportunity to take advantage of this. And this is what we're trying to do. My wife is on board with the idea. And so we're trying to put an alternative out there for the country.
What is your website where people can contribute to Will Hurd for president if they want to?
Sure. You can go to hurdforamerica.com. I'm working towards, I haven't hit the 40,000 threshold to get on to the debate stage. If you want someone who knows the difference between a Uyghur and a Weeble, go ahead and donate to me. If you want someone who, has spent a career, the only candidate that served overseas, fighting terrorists post 9/11, then give me at least $1. Help me get on that stage to have some common sense on that debate stage.
Hurd for America, HURD. A couple of quick questions. How many contributors do you have thus far, Will Hurd?
I think we're about 19-20% of the way to the goal. That's how we look at it. We already have hit the metric in a number of states. Each individual state, you have to have 200. But we have about 4 weeks to get to that point. And I'm hoping there's a lot of your smart listeners that care about foreign policy that aren't afraid to support a dark horse candidate and realize, a small, committed, a handful group of people can change the world. Go to hurdforamerica.com and give at least $1.
I'm going to come to the Uyghurs in a second. I want to ask you about aid to Ukraine because it's going to divide the party quite a lot. What do you think about continued aid to Ukraine?
So the United States of America has benefited from an international order that we created after World War II. When we don't support that international order, that hurts us. And the way you prevent Ukraine from becoming a forever war, and I think, I don't care where you are on the political divide, nobody wants to see Ukraine become a forever war. The way you prevent that from happening is making sure the Ukrainians have the tools now in order to push the Russians out of Ukraine. Why have we waited so long to provide the equipment they need? Why are we running out of bullets? Right? We're the United States of America. We should be able to solve this problem. And if the defense industrial base can't sort this out, we need to be thinking about different options. Why are we not helping our NATO allies provide the tools that the Ukrainians need in order to have a no-fly zone? Because here's the bottom line. If Ukraine loses and Russia comes in, then we're going to have to fight the Russians because they're not stopping. And they're going to go in ultimately into a NATO country. So let's help the Ukrainians fight and push the Russians out. And so yes, right now, if you look at how much money we have spent in supporting our allies in Ukraine, it's about 5% of the entire our DoD budget, right? So for 5%. We're having somebody that's laying it to the Russians, right? I think that's a pretty good deal. And yes, we shouldn't have this a forever war, but let's give them the tools they need to go on offense. We wouldn't be fighting this war the way they are. The Russians have air superiority. People criticized me back in February 22 when I said we should be helping the Ukrainians establish a no-fly zone. Imagine what the Ukrainians would be able to do with that. So we should support our allies because what we do here, and I'm sorry to go on a long monologue, Hugh, what we should, this is the Chinese are watching, the Iranians are watching, and how this gets resolved is going to determine future conflicts. And I'm speaking specifically here about Taiwan.
Well, let's talk about Taiwan, the Uyghurs, and Hong Kong. I left Hong Kong out of the Mayor Suarez conversation where he did a face plant. What do you think that government's ultimate ambition is? Because I think they're just Leninists through and through, and they don't care how many people they kill.
Their goal is simple. Hugh, this is not my opinion. The Chinese Communist Party has said they are going to surpass the United States of America as the global superpower. And they're going to do that by being the world leader in a number of advanced technologies. It's about 14 to 16 that are written in these documents. That's 5G, AI, hypersonics, quantum computing, synthetic biology. There's a number of these, right? And so part of that is making sure that they corner the market on advanced semiconductor manufacturing. Why should any American care about semiconductors, right? Because guess what? They are the building blocks of every technology. Everything from your smartphone to your fancy car to your freaking refrigerator, right? And 60% of advanced manufacture of semiconductors are done in Taiwan. So you corner that market, guess what? You corner the market in every one of those advanced technologies I was talking about. Now, here's what I would say. I don't think the Chinese want to have a world war, but they are building a military in order to apply their hard power, and they're not going to be afraid to use it. And I think their preferred option in Taiwan is to do what they did in Hong Kong, and they were able to take over Hong Kong about 10 to 12 years ahead of what all the international documents said they were supposed to have. And that's why this upcoming election in Taiwan really matters, because the party in opposition is probably going to warm relations with China, and we're going to see some cross-strait changes that could open the door for the Chinese to do.
Congressman, what does their treatment of the Uyghurs telegraph to you about the nature of their government?
That they're going to stop at anything in order to get their goals, right? The fact that you're imprisoning and putting the Uyghurs in internment camps, right, forcing them into slave labor, and that they recognize that they can continue to do it because you still have big global brands that are coming in and dealing with that is a sign. The way they're using technology in their own country, they're using AI and facial recognition in order to give a social score to people, in order to keep track of you. What they're trying to do with their economy and make it to where the government can see what individuals are able to do, right? We know what an authoritarian government is going to do, and they're going to do anything in order to meet their goals. Hell,
Congressman, we are out of time, so I want to give hurdforamerica.com again, HURD, and a quick exit question. We got 20 seconds. Will you support whomever the nominee is, regardless of who that person is?
My issue is not with the Republican nominee. My issue is with Donald Trump, and I can't lie in order to get access to a microphone.
Then I don't think you get on the debate stage, do you?
Well, we'll see if Donald Trump hasn't even agreed to sign the pledge. So we'll see what happens with the mechanics of that. But I'm still working towards hitting all the metrics in order to do that.
Will Hurd, you got to sign that pledge. I'm going to be supporting the nominee. I'm Switzerland right now, but I'm for the Republican nominee, whoever that might be. Thank you, Congressman. Come back.
Thank you.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I am a little disappointed in Congressman Hurd not committing to support the Republican nominee. I think that pledge is a good one to take. It means you won't play around with no labels. We'll get him back and we'll talk some more about that. But I just do not believe that a Republican should be on the stage unless they commit to supporting the nominee. I don't. And Ronna McDaniel laid that out. I am a Republican. I am center right. I've always supported every nominee. Ford, Reagan, Bush, Dole, McCain, Romney, Trump. I have supported them all because the Republican Party is better for America than the Democratic Party by a lot. It isn't even close. Not even close. That got to play for you. A little of former President Trump talking yesterday at Turning Point. I think this is amusing and true. Cut number 9.
Think of it. They have cocaine going into the White House. They've got more cameras than any building probably in the world. It's opposite the Situation Room. I said it the other day, first time, Situation Room, know it very well. Probably the most important room anywhere in the world. That's where war is decided, where nuclear is decided, where everything is decided. They say, oh, gee, we didn't have any cameras. Like hell they didn't. Think of it.
All right, so he's right about this, and very few people can speak from experience of having roamed around the West Wing at will. Only one person gets to. I don't even think the vice president gets to roam around at will, but they might. Maybe 2 people do. And I went there a few times in the Trump era. I went over to meet with Pat Cipollone once. I went over to see Ambassador O'Brien. He was National Security Advisor a couple of times. Went and saw Jared once. Went to the Oval once with former President Trump. And, so I've been in maybe 5 times in the last 6 years. And each time, I know the drill. You go through a check on 17th Street. Then you go through the antechamber, the waiting room to get into the West Wing. And you got to put all your electronics in a cubby. And you take the key with you. And then you put the key on the thing. And you go past the uniformed Secret Service. And you are on tape from the moment you turn left onto 17th Street. All right, they got eyes on you the moment you're getting close to the old EOB. And that's a lot different from when I worked in the old EOB in the 80s, but it's not much different from when I was in the counsel's office and we went up. Well, Fred Fielding was always there, but Dick Hauser was never there. Dick was on the golf course. But when we would go up for the weekly staff meeting, Dick would phone in occasionally from 7th, 8th tee, and we'd have our staff meeting. You had to do the same thing. Go through the secrets, and it's all on film in the 80s. In the 80s. Now they got cubbies because of the electronic. It is definitely on film. The former president is right. But I was shocked. The news of the weekend is he's taken Hillary's name away. Cut number 8.
So I took the name Crooked away from Hillary, and we gave her a new name. Beautiful. I call beautiful. This is so beautiful. But I took it away because I don't believe in the same name for 2 people. I don't like that. And I've never.
He remains the best interview in America. He just does because he's funny and unprogrammed. That one wasn't expected by anyone. Welcome back, America. Jake Tapper's got a brand new thriller out. This is it. All the demons are here. Welcome back, Jake. Good to have you back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Congratulations. Another great thriller.
Thank you so much, Hugh. It's great to be back.
It is a very good read. It's also, I think, a very provocative metaphor. Am I right about that latter part?
I think it's fair to say. Yeah, there are a couple metaphors in there that are resonant to today's politics and today's news media situation, 100%. Even though the novel takes place in 1977, I played with some of the characters there and invented others to make it relevant to today.
1977 is my sweet spot, Jake. You're too young, but I lived that. I was a senior in college in 1977 and 78. So I lived all this stuff, including the blackout, and you got it pitch perfect. Who was your research advisor on 1977? Because you're too young.
Well, I was 8, so it's true, I don't remember much. I remember the gas lines and Jimmy Carter, and I remember Elvis dying, which was very sad to me because I was an Elvis fan. But as with all these books, the first one, The Hellfire Club in 1954, and the second one, The Devil May Dance in 1962, I dove into research from the time, and Life Book of the Year, and People Book of the Magazine of the Year, and read a lot and watched a lot of documentaries. Evel Knievel is a big character in the book, as you know. I watched a great documentary that Johnny Knoxville produced called Being Evil. Watched another great documentary about Elvis Presley called The King by Eugene Jarecki. And thankfully, 77 is recent enough that there's a lot of documentary evidence and newspaper reports and stuff that's very accessible. And it was really fun. You know, my memory of 1977 is probably a lot lamer than your memory of 1977 because mine was just, you know, in my backyard. And I didn't know about the wild, I knew of disco music, but I didn't know how wild Studio 54 was. I knew, well, I didn't know about Summer of Sam and the Son of Sam murders. My parents hid that from me. So it was a rediscovery of an era for me, and it really was a very bizarre time. Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. People talk about that being in the 60s. It's sex, drugs, and disco, but the 70s was a much more wild time.
It's definitely 77 to 80. The curse of disco fell on my college years. And it was called Boston in Boston, not Studio 54, but very much the same thing. Jake, I am surprised, though, by Elvis. I am not an Elvis guy. We're going to come back and play the only Elvis song when we do our third segment as the intro on the radio. Where did you pick up this Elvis stuff? Because the fetching Mrs. Hewitt loved Graceland, but she's not an Elvis person either, and she's also a senior in college in 1977, 78. Where does Elvis come from?
My mom. My mom was a big Elvis fan, born in 1942, so that's really in her sweet spot. And so I knew Elvis music from her, and he was pretty cool. I mean, for me, 6, 7, 8 years old, his comeback special on NBC, the 1968 comeback special, I defy you to find a better hour of television. You know, it's funny. So the book tells the story of Ike, who is a 20-year-old AWOL Marine, and Lucy, who's a 22-year-old aspiring journalist in Washington. They are the kids of the protagonists in the two previous books. And Lucy, the journalist, has a lot of my habits and a lot of my more annoying tics, like correcting people when they misuse the word ironic and such. But
ironic! A footnote gets dropped on ironic.
Ike's love of Elvis is truly my love of Elvis. Ike is a very different character than me. He's a very tough Marine, and that's not me and all that. But Ike's love of Elvis is my love of Elvis.
You know, I came back, Jake, to San Clemente in the winter of '79, having gone home to Ohio. I was working for Nixon, and my dingy little apartment had been broken into and rifled, so I had to go across the street because they pulled the phone out of the cord. And I walked into a museum to Elvis. I mean, it was creepy, spooky. Some people go way in on Elvis. And I thought to myself, maybe Jake has some of the Elvis bourbon jugs. And no, none of that stuff. There's no Elvis behind you.
But as a kid, I did, I have somewhere in storage Elvis paintings and Elvis prints and Elvis cups and such that I got as birthday presents. When I turned 7, when I turned 8, when I turned 9 from friends of mine. I mean, they're not hanging up anywhere now, but they do exist somewhere. Yeah, I was a legitimate fan of the King, and his death.
A diversion. You describe his death in '77. You describe how he dies, and everybody goes to Graceland. And you talk about the kitsch that arrives, this sort of souk of Elvis kitsch. And I'm curious, do you personally own any T-shirts? Because I think you finally nailed it, why people buy concert T-shirts. I have never, I wish I had bought one at Bob Dylan, the Rolling Thunder Review, but I didn't. Do you own any?
I don't have any Elvis T-shirts. No, I do have.
How about concert T-shirts?
Yeah, I know. I have concert T-shirts. The most recent one was Darius Rucker. Yeah, you wear it to show people that you went there.
You put your finger on it.
It's not even about the person. It's about you, really.
It's about you. It's like a tattoo for some people, and it's very well articulated. Before we get too far ahead, we got to say all the demons are here 7 times, according to Frank Luntz. To sell all the demons are here, although it's flying off shelves. Give people the backstory of the Martyr family, because they may not have read the Hellfire Club or its sequel. Tell them about Charlie Martyr and the rest of them.
So Charlie Martyr is a World War II hero and a New York City academic, a historian at Columbia University. And in the first book, he is an unlikely congressman. He becomes a member of Congress. He is basically a Rockefeller or an Eisenhower Republican thrust into the world of Joe McCarthy's Washington, D.C. in 1954. And no fan of communists, but also no fan of Joe McCarthy. He finds himself trying to do good, but as I have seen with so many people who come to this town, Washington, he makes compromise after compromise after compromise before he knows what he's doing. He's no longer trying to do good. He's trying to just like keep his head above water. So that's the Hellfire Club. The second book, Attorney General Robert Kennedy blackmails Charlie, and he and his wife Margaret go out to Los Angeles to find out if Frank Sinatra is actually mobbed up or if it's just kind of an act. And this is based on a real story. The real story being that Sinatra, after helping Kennedy get elected in 1960, and maybe some of his underworld friends helped Kennedy too, with the West Virginia primary, not to mention Illinois, Sinatra wanted President Kennedy to stay at his Rancho Mirage compound when he came for a presidential visit. And he had a helipad built. He had all these wires and telephone wires and lodging for the press, etc. And then ultimately, because Sinatra was perceived to be mobbed up, Attorney General Kennedy scotched the trip, and Sinatra lost his mind. So that's the family. That's the Martyr family. He is a Rockefeller Republican, and the party he loves the Republican Party. He's not a fan of Democrats, but the party does change, and he does have issues with some of the directions it's going. In 1977, it is the post-Nixon, post-Vietnam War era, and Charlie, along with a lot of Republicans, are trying to figure out what's next for the Republican Party. That's kind of like a sub-theme in the background of the book.
You know, I read back to back, and I read and listened to All the Demons Are Here, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But then I read Kim Strassel's new book, The Biden Malaise, which is about the Carter years, primarily comparing them to the Biden years. And she's on the nose about the 70s as well as you were on the nose about the 70s. The one thing that you stretched, Charlie Martyr gets elected to the Senate in 1974. No Republicans won anything. They lost 4 net Senate and 49 net in the House. Did anyone win in 1974 that I'm unaware of in the Senate?
Well, remember, okay, so A, this is fiction. But B, Charlie, in my alternative world, Charlie, because he voted for to impeach Nixon as a member of the House Judiciary Committee, he and real life Congressman Larry Hogan Sr. were the only ones to do so. So in my fictitious world, because Charlie is lauded for that and lauded for his skepticism of the Vietnam War, he gets a lot of Democratic votes, and the Democrats put a weak candidate against him, and that's how he wins. But yes, I recognize that it's fiction, and I have to take some flights of fancy.
Yeah, my first campaign was Paul Cronin's campaign for Congress in 1974, and I was volunteering as a freshman in college. He got wiped out by Paul Zongas. It was just a bad year to be a Republican in 1974 and 76. Jake, why is Charlie Martyr anti-pirate?
Why is he anti-pirate? Because pirates are not romantic vision, the way that we romanticize them in this country. With the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and all, they're horrible. They're thieves.
Is that a Jake Tapper thing? Is that a Jake Tapper peeking through the book?
Yes. Well, I mean, it's because somebody uses the term with like join our merry band of pirates, and Lucy thinks about how much her dad hates that when people romanticize, because he's an academic, and you know this. Pirates were marauding, murderous, raping thieves. They were horrible people. There's nothing romantic about it. They weren't soldiers of fortune. They were criminals. They were criminals, and the only reason why anybody thinks they're romantic is because they were on boats, right?
Yeah, they're terrorists on boats. But I still love Talk Like a Pirate Day. In terms of Lucy and Ike, I am right between them chronologically in age, as you said. I'm right there between those two. And I am curious, is there another martyr child coming along anywhere, or are we going to go 3 generations down the road?
I don't know what's next in terms of fiction. I'm in the middle of writing one that takes place in 1984 because I've done 50s, 60s. This one's 70s. So the next one logically would be the 80s. And I'm in the middle of writing one right now that's from the point of view of Lucy, and she is on a special cruise ship on their way to Normandy in 1984 for the 40th anniversary of the D-Day invasion and Ronald Reagan's big speech and the like. And this cruise ship has all these World War II heroes on it, and all these generals and all these people who helped win the war. And on the very first night, one of the top generals of World War II disappears. So that's the next one in the series. But I don't have Ike or Lucy with child in book 4. So I mean, I guess they age, like in Gasoline Alley, like they're
It's like Danny
aging
Silva
with
and Gabriel Alon. I'm going to talk to Jake during the break. He's going to come back for 2 more segments. All of this will be on the podcast. Don't go anywhere, radio audience. Jake Tapper will be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. Part 2 of my 4-parter with Jake Tapper about his brand new book, All the Demons Are Here. You can order it from Amazon. Jake, this is a short segment, so I want to know where Caravaggio comes from, because he just kind of lands in the middle of the book. And I thought, oh, Jamie Gangel and Danny Silva are talking to Jake about painting. Where did he come from?
So Caravaggio's in there because there is a conversation about, can you separate the art from the artist? Can you look at somebody's great achievements, such as Caravaggio's gorgeous art, and distance that from the murderer that was Caravaggio? And it comes in a conversation about Evel Knievel, and can you look at his great achievements as a stuntman while separating him from the fact that he was kind of an awful person, like he was a bigot and he was horrible to his wife, etc. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but also this is a boozy conversation at the Dead Canary, this fictitious bar in Butte. But it's a conversation that I think a lot of us have about, Woody Allen and all sorts of other people, Michael Jackson, R. Kelly. Can you separate a man from his work, especially when that individual is a horrible person? But Caravaggio just seemed like a fun way to have that conversation, and it was a little too early for them to be talking about. It's 1977 in the book, so some of the things that would have offended us in 2023 maybe wouldn't have been as offensive to the culture, especially to Ike and Governor Lucky Strong in this boozy conversation in 1977. So I thought a murderer would be good.
I was reminded of Danny's books, but you mentioned the Bitterroot Mountains. C.J. Box is the only other person who's ever mentioned the Bitterroot Mountains in my reading habits. Do you read C.J.?
I don't, but I spend time out in Idaho every year, and so I am becoming little by little familiar with the terrain out there, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. I will admit I've never spent a winter there, so maybe my love of the land would be a little tempered if I had to live through one of their isolating winters. But I do just love the landscape, and I love to fly fish out there too.
I was going to ask if you were a fly fisherman, because that's what takes people to the Mountain West. And a bunch of people, I'd come to Maine in the summer. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back with Jake Tapper on the radio, and then 4th segment coming up afterwards. Stay with us. Here's the book. All the Demons Are Here. It's at Amazon. It's also in every bookstore you could possibly want, flying off the shelves. We'll be right back, America. America, if you were like me, a lifeguard in the late 70s, you heard this song about a bazillion times on the chair. Elvis features prominently in Jake Tapper's new thriller, All the Demons Are Here. And that's actually the only song I can remember from Elvis, because I wasn't an Elvis guy. But Elvis Evil are big in this book. So is a guy named Max Lyon. Is he based on Robert Maxwell loosely?
He's more based on Rupert Murdoch. He is of that ilk. He is of that ilk of media magnates from the Commonwealth, so either from the UK or from Australia, etc., and comes to the United States to get a toehold in American media. Starts off with a newspaper, wants a TV channel. He's at the beginning of building his empire in the United States, although he has this empire throughout the English-speaking world. And he's fictitious, Max Lyon. But in terms of 1977, as you know, Hugh, was not just the son of Sam murders, which gripped New York City. It was also the rise of the New York Post and the New York Daily News. And I tried to get into the head of a Rupert Murdoch type or Robert Maxwell type And one of the arguments he makes when talking about his journalism, and it's kind of a through line because they're wooing Lucy to become a journalist at their fictitious DC tabloid, the Washington Sentinel. One of the points they make is the New York Times is barely covering the son of Sam murders. It's like a local crime story. Meanwhile, to New Yorkers, this is a huge story. There is a serial killer, preying on people in the outer boroughs. And so there's a line actually that the Max Lyon character makes, says, it's on page 90, but I can't remember exactly, but it's something along the lines of, I know of no other industry in the world that so confidently is determined to give the people what they do not want. And that's his view of the news media, especially newspapers at the time. And that attitude that I think, I wouldn't say it's a completely correct diagnosis, but there's something there that leaves a chasm for tabloid journalism to fill.
Max Lyon says, and I think it's in that monologue on page 90, there's a great anger growing in America, and it's going uncovered as a result of the, let's call it elite media's refusal to cover it. But the son of Sam also occurred in the summer of the blackout. There was the big blackout, the first blackout. This is the second blackout. Not many people remember the second blackout, Jake. Did you live part of that? Was that close enough to Philly to remember?
No, this is all just through my research. I mean, it's just really amazing when I went to figure out how to do this book and where to put it. It's just amazing the number of things that happened in 1977. The birth of Studio 54, the New York City blackout, the son of Sam murders, Elvis dies, and not to mention a whole bunch of other subtexts. Jimmy Carter's first year, obviously the Nixon Frost interviews air, and on and on. UFO sightings, cult membership. It's between, in terms of cults, it's between the creepy crawlies and Charles Manson, but before Jonestown, which I think is like in the early 80s. So there is this distrust and frustration and disillusionment amongst the public. Jimmy Carter does not end up being a remedy for it. Some of it comes from Vietnam War, some of it comes from Watergate, some of it just comes from overall frustration, and it is there and it's real, and some of the grievances are grounded in reality, and that's one of the things I wanted to write about, because I feel like we're in a very similar period right now.
And we're going to talk about that in segment 4, but I do want to say to the radio audience, the best line in the book, which I always try and find a line in a book, is the causes don't compete, they coagulate. Now, I haven't heard that said anywhere before, but it is actually quite accurate about today and probably about every demonstration I've been to, going back to 1978, the demonstration at San Onofre and San Clemente had 20 different groups there because it was an occasion to get your name out there. Is that your diagnosis of today on both the left and the right? The causes don't compete, they coagulate?
I think so. I think that that's specifically about a specific group of people in this fiction following Evel Knievel and his fictitious run for president across the country. But as you see, Hugh, in that mob are some people who are just, prone to violence and crazy, and some people who have really legitimate grievances with the country. I mean, I think the most sympathetic characters in the book are the Vietnam veterans who are camping out in the West, and Ike joins up with them. And some of them are suffering from, they don't know what it is yet, but some of them are suffering from cancer as a result of Agent Orange. And there are real grievances there, and people who are frustrated often find common cause. And whether it's at a Trump rally or at a Black Lives Matter protest or in this fictitious book, in this fictitious mob, there are lots of people with lots of different issues, and they can sense a common cause, if not an exact common purpose, I think.
In fact, stay tuned. You got to listen to the podcast today, because there's a character in All the Demons Are Here named Caleb White, who's based on Chad Green, which I know quite a lot about because I had to write a paper about him as a senior at Harvard, and I followed Dr. Truman around during that whole drama. We're going to talk about that in the final segment on the podcast. Go out and get Jake Tapper's All the Demons Are Here. It's a good summary to Salena Zito tweeted this morning, belongs under every umbrella. Thank you for listening, America. I'll be back on the radio show tomorrow, and we'll finish the podcast and post it shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back, America. Last segment with Jake Tapper. Jake, I got weirded out when you brought up Caleb White. because I knew Dr. Truman, who was Chad Green's doctor. To avoid taking any science courses in undergraduate, I took the sociology of cancer for the Nat Sci requirement. And I went down to Mass Gen and I followed Dr. Truman around, and he was trying to get the Green family to treat Chad with what would have been painful but life-saving leukemia. And they took him down to Mexico for Laetrile, and he died. It was a tragedy. How did you find out about that?
So that's a great question. So Slate has a great podcast called 1 Year. And coincidentally, after I had picked 1977 as the year I was going to do for all the reasons I mentioned before, Elvis dying, Studio 54, the New York City blackout, Nixon Frost interviews, Evel Knievel literally jumping sharks, etc. I listened to the podcast, and one of the stories told is this story of this poor little boy and the false hope of Laetrile. For people who don't know, Laetrile was this alternative cure for cancer that was not real and did not work, but a lot of people put their hopes in it. And unfortunately, a lot of people who put their hopes in it ended up dying because they refused to participate in very painful chemotherapy processes that ultimately are the best chance. I wish they weren't. I wish there was a quick and easy pill that people could take. But and then this poor little boy died, and I have a fictitious version of that in All the Demons Are Here, because, well, I don't want to no spoilers, but obviously there are a lot of there are people who were making money off of Laetrile. I mean, that's just a fact. And poor Steve McQueen put his hopes in the Laetrile and died in Mexico, unsuccessfully fighting cancer. So that's how I heard about it. I heard about it on this podcast, and I thought that really reminds me in many ways of the skepticism that people have today about the CDC and the NIH and medicine. And I'm not talking about COVID now, but just in general, there is just this mistrust of science and this belief that in 1977, this was a very real thing. Jimmy Carter was asked about it during one of his call-ins at the White House, where there was this woman in North Carolina, and her dad had cancer, and he wanted to be able to try Laetrile. And at that time, it was the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare, but they wouldn't sign off on it because there was no medical evidence backing it. And again, he died, and it's sad, but it is so evocative to all the mistrust of government and mistrust of health advice that we heard in the last few years, and also just more broadly, this quackery about childhood vaccines, which are life-saving, and this idea that the people are just pushing childhood vaccines because they want to make money as opposed to they want to save lives. It's this very real thing. It's out there. It's on the left. It's on the right. And it was worth writing about because, you and I have talked about this before, Hugh, but history doesn't repeat itself. It's been said, it rhymes. And there's a lot of rhyming with that chapter.
Dr. Truman was so in agony over what these parents did because he loved the little boy. You get to love these kids when you treat them, and they spirited him away, and it was a disaster. But it was the first eruption of distrust. And the right to try legislation, I think, has its roots back in Chad Green. Jake, now let's talk about the metaphor, evil. I don't know much about evil except the Snake River jump. And I've used a lot of metaphors for former President Trump. He's Nelson Rockefeller without the art collection. He's P.T. Barnum without the circus. He's a lot of things. But you use evil. And I don't know if you meant it to be Trump, but he had a love of spectacle. He was not tied to anything that was new. He's something of a bargain bit. The entire decade was a Polaroid feeling. Evil never made calculations. Then you warned, don't confide in evil, because if you confide in evil, evil will use it. And evil surrounded himself with yes men. Now, that's not Donald Trump 100%, but how much is evil a metaphor for the former president?
Well, I think that when I learned, I was not a fan of Evel Knievel as a kid. His charm eluded me. But I had friends who had Evel Knievel lunchboxes and Evel Knievel action figures and the like. And I was out fishing in Idaho, and a friend of mine is a huge fan of Evel Knievel. And obviously, Idaho is where the Snake River jump, or the failed Snake River jump, took place. And he is a quintessentially American character. He's not meant to be Donald Trump in the book, but he and Trump both share this quintessential American character of, and this is not meant in a pejorative way. Obviously, Evel Knievel and Donald Trump are two very different people. I mean, Evel Knievel was a thief and a criminal early in his career, but they have this. You talked about P.T. Barnum. They have this ability to capture a public's imagination, to get news media coverage, to shoot from the hip and not really pay any consequence when it comes to saying things that if other people said them, they're so offensive that they would get in trouble. There is something larger than life, his charisma, his ability to get fans and supporters, that is evocative of Donald Trump. And it is not hard to imagine them, if the timing had worked out, being friends or allies or in
100%.
some ways maybe competitors in some ways.
Yeah, he would have been. I say Nelson Rockefeller without the art collection, because Nelson Rockefeller had a quite colorful personal history. He was dyslexic. He did not read. He just kind of made it up as he went along. He never met a headline he didn't like. He was New York and he was big. But Evel Knievel is very on the nose on evil. I didn't like him at all. I watched the Snake River jump because the whole country did. It probably had a 99 share when that happened, because everyone thought he was going to run into the canyon wall and die, but he didn't. And I didn't know he was named Bob. It's wonderfully plotted. I want to talk about the mechanics of this right now. I told you when we were setting up the interview, you sent me the book, thank you. But you also, I bought the tape because I have to use my time. And the readers are quite good, and you use two narrators. So how did you select the narrators for this? Because there's Lucy and there's Ike.
Right. In the chapter, the book is told in first person, and the chapters go back and forth between Ike and his adventure in Montana with Evel Knievel, and Lucy and her adventure in tabloid journalism in Washington. I did it to see if I could do it, to see if I could pull it off. Because the previous two books were in third person, which is safer and easier to write in. And I wanted to try not only to write in first person, but to go back and forth between Ike and Lucy, to have them sound different, to have them read different. We hired obviously two different voice actors to do their chapters, and I think they did a really good job. I got to listen to audition tapes and the like.
I was wondering. Fun. Yeah, I was wondering if you actually listened to audition tape for vocal artists, because nowadays, if you get the wrong person, it kills the book. I won't listen to a bad narrator.
No, that's such an important part. Right now, I'm listening to Paul Newman's memoir and on tape, and it's read by Jeff Daniels, and it's good because it's Jeff Daniels. I mean, I listened to Quentin Tarantino's novelization of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and it's read by Jennifer Jason Leigh. So like, if you have the right narrator, it's good. And I'm like you, I buy the Kindle version and I hook it up with the Audible version so I can listen to it in the car. And then if I want to keep reading, it is already adjusted to where I was in the page, and I can keep reading. And it's
oh, it does? I didn't know that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I have to cut it off at a chapter.
Yeah. You can hook up.
All right. Last question, Jake. How in the world do you do a book tour in the middle? I think you're interviewing Ron DeSantis. Maybe that's already in the can. But how do you do a book tour in the middle of a presidential campaign?
It's difficult, but obviously everything I need to do for the Ron DeSantis interview takes priority over any book stuff. So we've just rescheduled a lot of things, and this interview will be tomorrow from Columbia, South Carolina, and that's obviously top priority because that's my most important job, my day job, being a journalist, asking Governor DeSantis these questions. I know this is the first quote unquote legacy media interview he's done, and I want it to be fair, but I also want it to be tough, and I want it to be, there's no way I'm going to please everybody, that's for sure, but I want it to be, you know what I mean, Hugh, in that sweet spot of like respectful, but also like you're interviewing for the most important job in the world. Let's have some good questions.
His memoir is very good. He's a kid from the land because his grandfather's from Pittsburgh and his mother is from Poland, Ohio. So he's actually got a lot of Midwestern in him. Jake, I'll let you go. This is a fabulous read. All the demons are here. Congratulations. Keep selling books. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Hugh. Appreciate it. Good to see you.